Hey friends, it's Michelle Lamoureux and welcome back to the Good Life Podcast, a show for women in midlife who want to live happier, healthier, and more meaningful lives. Today on the show, we're also going to be talking about how to become financially healthy as well and to prepare for your retirement. Are you ready? That's what we're going to discover today together with my guest, Laura Rotter, who is the founder of True Abundance Advisors. For over 30 years, Laura has successfully managed money for institutional investors, including Citicorp on Wall Street, and had her own moment of realizing that abundance didn't just mean accumulating more wealth, but it was about using that wealth to do the things that she most valued. She's been in private practice since, working with clients on integrating the attainment of both financial security and life satisfaction as they near retirement. This is a deep dive. If you feel ready for your retirement or very financially savvy, I guarantee you'll still learn things that you may not have known before. And if you feel like you just aren't as financially literate as you'd like to be, this episode is definitely for you. So please share it with all your friends. We like to do a deep dive. So we cover really every facet of it: how much to save, how to prepare getting your kids off to college, how to prepare for the retirement, and so much more. All of the show notes for today will be over at thegoodlifecoach.com or on your podcast player. And there'll also be an invitation there to join my newsletter community with more inspiration, tips, and resources to live your best midlife. Please be sure to share this episode with a friend. Truly, it's such a good one. And I just adore Laura, and I know you will as well. On that note, let's get into the show. Here we go. Laura. Money is such a loaded topic for so many people, but the intention I want to set for today's conversation is one of empowerment and knowledge for women in midlife, heading towards retirement. Some of the women listening may already be in retirement. Having women know what they need to know to feel confident about their futures and secure, because I think a sense of security is also a sense of peace. And you're the expert that I felt called to talk to about this after our last conversation. I know there's a spiritual side you bring into all of this, but you've got 30 plus years in the financial sector. So I'm just happy to have you back and to explore what comes up today.
And Michelle, I'm so looking forward to this conversation. It's an important one, and it's one that many women are not that interested in hearing about.
Yeah. And I think that, yeah. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was thinking, like, I picked up some Manisha Thakor, I think is the one that connected us. So she was a guest on the show. She's got a strong financial background. I picked up her book On My Own 2 Feet, which I think she wrote a while ago. I was just curious what was in there because it was like the girl's guide to financial security kind of thing. And she wrote, according to the American Payroll Association, nearly 70% of Americans are essentially living paycheck to paycheck. And she also wrote that about 52% of women have a retirement plan and only 11% have a written plan. And I don't even know how important a quote unquote written plan is, but let's unpack that. Let's start here.
So first of all, I want to say that I buy Manisha's books for all the young people in my family. I've given it to my daughter. I've given it to my nieces. I think it's just financial fluency is not taught in our country, and it's so important. And specifically for women, we generally approach retirement in worse shape than men. We get paid less than men. I mean, we are working towards pay parity, but it is not true in our country. We are often the primary caregivers for our children and then for our parents. So we take time off from work. That lowers our eventual Social Security earnings. And we live longer than men by and large. So we need more money. We need to save more and take risk in our investments because We generally have longer lifespans than men. So we start behind the starting line, if you will. And there is a sense, I've worked with so many women, even primary breadwinners in their family, that are like, oh, I don't understand money, that it's
Mhm.
some sort of rocket science that, um, and we don't speak the language. So I just want to start our conversation by noting that.
This is a good place to be focusing. You said there's no financial education in the United States. I wonder if that's just a global issue. I'm not sure if we know that or not, but there's women in 80 countries that tune into the podcast.
Wow.
And I think that regardless of where you're at, it's true. We're not taught. And then people don't discuss finances in families, or as we discussed last time, oftentimes fathers will teach their sons, but they treat their daughters differently. It's like, go get married, or like somebody's going to take care of you, but I'm going to teach my boys how to uh, be financially secure. And we need to change that. And part of the way we change that is these kinds of conversations. It's just simply education and reframing the way we think about money. And also to add to what you said with the pay inequality, a lot of times women, including myself, pull themselves out of the workforce. So I had so much money saved that I felt comfortable doing that. But in retrospect, I don't think I would have made that choice. I think I would have liked to have kept some money coming in, some sense of connection to that, or some sort of side gig that I was doing to be continuing to earn, both to have that money coming in, but also for that sense of worth, which shouldn't be tied to it, but it does make you feel good to earn money.
Yes. And I'm going to assume that most of the women who are listening to this are earning some amount of money and are wondering, what am I supposed to do with it? How am I supposed to be spending? How am I supposed to be saving?
Exactly.
So, Michelle, when I look at money management, if you will, I look at two sides. I look at the inner work of wealth and the outer work of wealth. And it's very important to recognize that both are there. We all have stories that we tell ourselves about money. I just shared one of them. I'll put it into words. I don't understand money. I don't know how it works. There's never enough money. I'm sure I'm overspending. Or the other side, which is, I have more than enough money. I don't have to pay any attention. It'll be fine. The universe always comes and conspires in my favor. And the universe may conspire in your favor, but you can help the universe by paying attention to the money. So I want to acknowledge that emotions play a part in
Yeah.
our money decisions. And it's important to be aware of them and not to judge them. One of the primary roles I feel like I play with my clients is to create a safe space to explore these money stories and not to judge them. And you and I know we're the worst judges of ourselves. Our trash talk to ourselves, we would never talk that way to friends. So to be aware of the trash talk we have to ourselves about money. So I never divorce emotions from money. When I see ads that say, we will help you ignore your emotions or something to that extent, no, the emotions, the feelings are part and parcel of our work with money. So that's the first thing I just want to put out there. And then the outer work of money. And there are basically three things we can control. There are plenty of things we can't control. We can't control what the stock market is going to do. We can't control the thoughts in our head sometimes, but we can control how we spend, how we save, and over perhaps a longer period of time, what we earn.
Mm.
You just mentioned, Michelle, that you made a decision that perhaps now you look back on and question of to leave the workforce at one point. I made a decision when I left Wall Street. First of all, I made the decision to leave Wall Street and that I no longer was going to be a victim of my life and just work for money. And I did consider for a period of time, should I become a full-time yoga teacher? And I thought about it and I said, well, whether I build a financial planning practice or a yoga teaching practice, I'm going to have to build it. I'm going to have to network. I'm going to have to post Instagram of myself and downward facing dog. I'm going to have to go to different studios. And so when I considered both, I said, well, I think I'd rather put my energies towards something that has the potential to earn me more than what I would earn as a yoga teacher. So we have the ability to make decisions about income. And then we have the ability to make decisions, like I said, about spending and saving. And it, as you talked about financial fluency, financial classes that teach about finances, two of my three children, I'm very happy to say, came to me when they graduated college and said, what should I think about? How much should I pay for rent? How much should I pay for vacations? Because no one talks about it, like you said. So I think one of the most important things to me is this understanding that if you make your monthly expenses, the stuff you're going to pay for, even if you never get out of bed, your rent and your mortgage and your Netflix bill and your gym membership, if you make that more than half of what you're taking home, you're going to feel like you're choking all the time. You're going to feel like some of my clients who have houses that frankly are too big for them, and they feel like, I don't spend any money. Why am I not saving anything? So it's important to look at what those already committed expenses are. And those can be changed again over time. You might say, well, maybe I'm a new university graduate and I'm not making a lot of money. Maybe I shouldn't look to rent an apartment in the middle of New York City. Or if I decide to rent that apartment, then maybe I'm not also joining an expensive gym. Those are decisions you can make to have room for fun. So if you're spending half or less, then a third of your money can go towards fun, going out to drinks after work with your friends, going into the store when they have a big sale and buying the shoes without feeling like you don't have the resources for it.
Yeah.
And finally, so 50 on needs, 30, and I think Manisha does talk about this in one of her books, 50 on needs, 30 on fun, and then 20% ideally, maybe it's less, maybe it's 10% on saving towards having money in the bank for emergencies. So when you blow that tire and you have to replace it, you're not putting it on a credit card. Saving towards vacations. How much do you want to spend annually on vacations? Divide that by 12 and put a little bit away into a separate savings account. Nowadays, there are banks, I happen to use Ally Bank, that will let you make buckets. You don't have to open separate savings accounts, but you make buckets within the savings account. Save towards your Christmas gifts. Save towards your charitable giving. I mean, I had a client say to me, I went to Hawaii last month. I would usually put that on a credit card and take months to pay it off. But there it was. I had saved in my savings account. And like we pointed out earlier, that isn't just the dollars and cents of money, but that's his life. He feels easier. He feels responsible. He feels powerful that he's made choices that enable him to live within his means.
Yeah. And I feel like money is freedom. So what you're talking about is a sense of freedom to have autonomy over your time and what you're doing and your sense of joy, because why work if you're not having that fun? But let me ask you a question, because you said 50% or less on the needs, the mortgage, the heat, the car lease or whatever it is. 30% on fun, you said like going out to eat, but the fun wouldn't be travel, or it could be because so you're saying that came out of savings. Help us understand that a little bit, because part of me is thinking about, if we're saving for retirement, are we taking that 20% and not touching it? Because that's kind of how I was thinking of it. So tell us a little bit more about that.
So when I look at the percentages, I'm thinking in terms of months at a time.
Okay.
And many of us, and speaking for myself, spend on annual vacations more than I could take out in a monthly paycheck.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a matter of knowing that you're reserving towards a bigger expected expense, or perhaps two big checks if you do two big vacations. In terms of saving for retirement, people often ask me, well, how much, if I'm a W-2 employee, how much should I be putting in my 401k? And the easy answer, especially for younger people who might not have the ability to fully fund it, is if your employer is offering you free money in terms of a match, that's the minimum.
Yeah.
And it's actually interesting nowadays, Michelle, it wasn't true when I was a W-2 employee, but now employers will tell you you're putting away 6%, and that's the default. And you have to then go in and change it if you don't want the default. The default used to be 0. And I'm sure you're aware of so many people that didn't even realize they should be signing up. But now the corporate parents have determined that there will be some small contribution. That's the default rate. And I would say, ideally, put at least 10% of your paycheck away into retirement savings. Obviously, everybody's situation is different.
Yeah.
And so when I'm saying look at what comes into your bank account each month and then spend 50% or less on needs, it's the net amount. It's not the gross amount of what you're earning, but after you've made the 401k contribution, after they've taken out money toward your healthcare expenses or insurance or whatever comes out of your paycheck, what is left and what goes into your bank account. And another ideal is to pay yourself first. When that money is deposited in the bank account, often you can tell the employer or ADP, put 10% directly into a savings account or 20% directly into a savings account. So you're not even tempted by the money sitting there in your checking account.
I like that. What was the bank you said? Ally Bank? What is that?
Yeah, ALLY, Ally Bank. It's a purely online bank account.
Yeah.
One of the things they have, other than they pay quite a nice interest rate, I think they're still above 4% now.
Wow.
But within my savings account, I don't have to open more savings account, but I have a charity bucket and I have a vacation bucket. So I know I'm contributing each month into those buckets, and I make sure that it's there so I can see it and draw down upon it. Like when I give charity, if I make a donation into my donor advised fund, I will reduce the charity portion of my savings account. It's just a good way to track particular savings. I have clients who are saving towards college education, so they put a certain amount into that education bucket, perhaps over and above some particular saving vehicles for education.
Yeah, I was curious because even my daughter, she's like, I want to learn about this. She's 15. And she said, I wish my Apple Pay, because that's like her dad will put some money on there, whatever, once a month. And she said, I wish I could allocate a certain amount to savings and a certain amount to, spend, and, so she could categorize it. It's what you're talking about. And I didn't know. It sounds like that's what Ally lets you do. What do you advise parents to teach their kids, like how to manage their money? Is it having a savings account, checking account? It's so different now. I'm so behind my audience. Don't be embarrassed by me, but like just starting to figure out the whole Apple Pay, because I still use a credit card. I'm still pretty old school.
And that is, but so first of all, I'm going to digress and say using a credit card is part of what creates this confusion because our spending is just this one big mush, right?
Mm,
Like you have no idea. Some people who are very detailed might take time each month to look at the credit cards and gee, how much did I spend on fun and how much was needs? But it's just too difficult so that and then I'll get back to the question about your daughter. But one of the things when I first left Wall Street and was very concerned about keeping my spending in line because I never had to think about how I spent before,
yeah.
or for clients who are having real difficulty, I will say, okay, what's the fun allocation? Let's say it's 30% of monthly income. Divide that by 4 and then have a separate checking account, easy enough to do nowadays in online accounts, and put that, let's say you're spending 1,000 a month on fun. I'm picking a round number.
Sure. Yes.
Put 250 a week into a separate checking account and either just use your debit card, which you can use just like a credit card, or cash so that you can check that balance. You have
Mm,
it on your phone and you can say, wow, it's Wednesday. I'm down to $10. It's the mindfulness factor that's missing in how
mm,
most of us.
yes.
Um, so, and then to your question about how to teach kids, first of all, I have 3 children, and it's interesting that they all have their own personality around spending and money from a young age. And I have to say, as a parent, they didn't start to really have to be in charge of watching how much they were spending till they left for college.
Yeah.
Then, like most parents, you say, okay, here's your monthly allotment. I did not give them a credit card. My kids are, a decade out of school. I don't know what parents are doing now, but so they knew they had to keep to a certain amount of money. And when we went on vacation, that was the only time we would say, because of course, when you're with your kids, they want the shirt and the this and the that, they
Totally.
want the souvenirs. So my husband and I would say, you have this much to spend on souvenirs while we're on vacation. And then their personalities shown out, right? My very, very frugal son, he wouldn't spend anything. Like he would save it up. Maybe there's something big I want. And my daughter, who's a pretty big spender on little things, like she doesn't like fancy things, but she's
Yeah.
always buying little things. She would spend it by the first day.
Love
So
it.
you have to know your child's personality to the extent that your daughter's asking at the age of 15. She sounds like someone who, similar to her mother, will be very responsible with her money and wants to know how to manage it.
Yeah, maybe. I hope so. She's sweet with that. Yeah, she likes to spend too, but I think she's like, "Oh, I'm not saving." And that's what I think sparked it. But so let's go. So you said there were well, 3 categories, and I'm going to add one for the sake of what we're talking about today. You said spending, which you covered, saving, you covered. You talked about earning. So, how should we be thinking about earning, and how do we think about it in terms of retirement? How do you know how much money you need to live? Do you have to pick an age? Like, okay, they say by 65. I don't know why that's the age. People think they're going to retire. Some people never want to retire. Some people want to retire at 55. You know what I mean? It just depends where they're at and what their situations are. But how do you figure out that number? Because if you aren't going to be earning a paycheck, how do you know how to live for the next whatever 20 years, 10 years, and factor in health crises or those aging parents or something that comes up that you don't anticipate?
That is a great question, Michelle, which I will address with the caveat that
Depends.
everybody's situation is different. So I'm going to make a broad statement about how
Please.
to think
Yeah.
about retirement spending. I do also want to say, I think the word retirement, as we're in this age of people living longer and longer. My mother-in-law is 91 and a half years old. I have, there's so much longevity. I'm assuming our children will live way into their hundreds. So I do want to make the point about saving that women tend to, again, as a generalization, be very risk averse. And if you're going to live till 95 years old plus, you must earn a return on your savings. Even nowadays that you can get 4 or 5% in stable government bonds, that's not enough if you're going to live for many, many years. So you do need to be investing in the stock market.
Yeah.
I just want to make the comment that when you need the money, in my industry known as the time horizon, should dictate how much risk you take with your money. You want to buy a house in 3 years and you're saving money for down payment, that money ain't going in the stock market.
Yeah.
You have 5+ time horizon, yes, invest in the stock market. And I believe the way to invest is to have a low cost, diversified stock portfolio. It's not, I'm going to roll the dice and put it all on crypto, or I'm going to roll the dice and put it all on one stock.
NVIDIA, whatever the latest
exactly
stock
NVIDIA.
is. Yeah.
Right. It's in exchange traded funds, mutual funds, low cost, some in US, some international, some emerging, some big companies, some small companies, industries. So I just want to make that point that you're not going to have enough money to retire if it's all in a bank, or even worse, under your mattress. And you don't want to, and if you feel like you want to have some fun investing your money, go ahead, put 1%, at most 5% in something that floats your boat. If you're putting it in an individual stock or cryptocurrency, you are speculating and have a certain amount of money that you're willing to lose.
Okay.
So that's my point about investing/savings. So here's the rule of thumb for achieving financial freedom/retirement. Look at what you're spending now. I'm going to say, let's say you're spending $100,000 a year now, again, because it's a round number and I live in the New York metropolitan area.
And the clients you work with are doing well. So yeah, no, this is good. And it's a round number, like you said.
Right. And again, if we were doing a complex projection, we would use inflation and we would inflate healthcare by 5%, but we're going to say 100,000.
Okay.
And I do want to point out there's something in my industry known as the retirement smile, which is the thought that when you stop working, of course, you can take out what you're spending on clothes and commuting and obvious work-related spending, but that when you stop working and you're healthy, you might actually spend more in those first couple of years, because now you're taking that cruise that you never had time to take, or you're taking the month in an Airbnb in Italy and hanging out, or you're going across the country to visit your grandchildren that you never had time to do. And so there is a thought that you could spend more in the first couple of years. And then as you imagine a smile, as you age, and I've already seen this with some of my older clients,
yeah,
you're not going to the theater as much. You're not going out to eat as much. You're tired. You're less mobile. And so your spending does go down over time until the end of the smile, which is in the last couple of years of life, healthcare expenses do tend to go up. So there is a way to project in a more complex way how your spending will change over time. We're just going to take a flat 100,000. And then you're going to look at the guaranteed sources of income that you have. And most of us have Social Security. And most of us will be surprised by how much Social Security will provide. Many of us will get anywhere from $30,000 to $40,000 a year in Social Security. And that's guaranteed. Again, if you're younger, it's not going to go away. You're putting your money into it, but maybe the benefit will change. But for those of us already in our 50s, you're going to collect your Social Security. If you wait to collect till 70 each year, the benefit goes up by a guaranteed 8%. And there are cost of living increases. So it is a pension that you created with your own money, but that the government provides for you.
Yes.
Some of us may have other guaranteed sources of income. We may have pensions. We may have purchased annuities. So subtract out that guaranteed amount from your mythical 100,000. So
Yeah.
now I need another 60,000 a year to live my current lifestyle that I would like to continue to live. And this is where it's really quick and dirty, but the rule of thumb in my industry is take that number, so 60,000, and multiply it by 25. So 60,000, 25, I need $1.5 million in savings to throw off that 60,000 a year. Now, how do I come up with that? Well, the rule of thumb in my industry is also that over a long period of time, you are likely to earn 4% from your investments. So 25 is the inverse of 4%. So if I have $1.5 million and I take out 60,000 a year, over time, I will still have $1.5 million.
Interesting. Because that money's being invested. It's
That
in the
money
market. Okay.
in the
Yeah.
market, and it will. And why I say that is because there are certainly people I work with who are like, I don't have any kids. I'm not interested in leaving a legacy. And so perhaps they can spend more because they're not looking to maintain their portfolio. And another way that people could potentially spend more is maybe I say to them, right, you're healthy, you're stopping working, you want to travel, we'll spend some more now. If you're willing to tell me that if there's a large downdraft in the market, and of course I use software to help me come up with the numbers, but if the market goes down by 40%, you have to cut your spending by $500 a month or something like that. And that you have to be able to do that. Like, this isn't all committed spending. If we have a large market downdraft, you won't take the same kind of vacation for a year, but we can start spending more if there's a willingness, if it comes up, to spend a bit less.
Okay. And do you advise? Oh, yeah, please go ahead.
I was just going to say, someone asked me to walk backwards in a workshop I led recently, which is, I'm already retired. My husband and I argue about how much we're spending and how do I know if I'm spending within my means. So I sort of did the backwards, like, okay, how much are you spending now? How much has to be generated from your portfolio? What size should your portfolio be? If it's much higher than what you need, then perhaps you should talk to your husband about your different money stories and how you would prefer to spend more. And if the portfolio is much less than what you need, then maybe you need to sit down and work with someone to help get your spending in line and understand changes you can make. So there's different ways the equation could work, if you will.
And Laura, how do you do it? A spreadsheet? Like, how do you actually structure to look at what you're spending and what you're saving? How do you do it? Through your bank? I mean, what process do you use to make sure you're on track?
So I can share some links with you that you can put in the show notes. I have started to recommend that clients use something called Tiller. This is just for tracking spending. It is a spreadsheet. You can either use Excel or Google Docs, and you connect your accounts, your bank accounts, and your credit cards, and it will update it. And you set up some category parameters, like every time you see Whole Foods, that's groceries, and every time you see CVS, that's pharmacy, and it will auto categorize. And then I have a money date with myself every Sunday, and I look, and I have to reiterate that it's about mindfulness, because certainly in the summer, I'm spending more. I go out a lot. I'm taking vacations. And it's like, but I see it. I see each month what's coming in, what's going out. I see what I anticipated, and I say, oh.
I think that's important because people don't want to look at it sometimes, right? It's just ignorance is not bliss, but it feels better in the short term. It won't be better in the long term.
Yes. And it's important to look as a prerequisite for making changes, not to immediately make changes. I'm
Yeah.
working with a couple, they have healthy income, they save nothing. And there's a lot of back and forth of blaming each other. You overspend, you overspend. So,
Oh, they both have income, but there's no savings happening.
right. Actually, it's mostly the husband's income in this particular case, but
Yeah.
that it's a household and she's the one who runs the household and
Yeah.
makes the spending decisions. And so it's as much emotional work about how to voice your feelings and needs without attacking the other, but that's a different conversation. And then just start. They've just put their accounts into Tiller and started to categorize. And I say, take a deep breath. This isn't about judging. You're
Right.
fine. You're young. You have a lot of earnings power. You will be okay. Let's just see what you're doing now. And once you can calmly look and not judge, then you can start to make changes. Maybe I don't need to take all those vitamins that, it's amazing. It's interesting to see what people spend money on.
Right. And that's where values comes into play too, though,
Exactly.
which is okay if they're aligning their spending with their values, as long as it still meets the longer term objective, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Versus just spending for this, some people like to spend, and that's, you know, just having awareness around that. Like you said, like your daughter, the first day the money was gone on the vacation, and that's something when you're mindful you can adjust. So what about, so since my audience is midlife, like you said, some may be in retirement, some may be heading, maybe they're going to be there in 5 to 10 years. Some are younger, they still have the kids that haven't even gone off to college yet. Are you a fan? That's where you got to be focusing on the earnings, I imagine, and the savings and all that. Are you a fan of those college savings accounts? Or does, again, I'm sure all of these questions, it depends, but what are your thoughts on how to approach it when you have kids who are going to be heading off to college?
I am a big fan of 529 plans. I'm located in the state of New York, where if you put 10,000 a year into a 529 plan, it's deductible for New York State tax purposes. I know other states have similar clients. In Colorado, I think even 30,000 a year was deductible if you put into 529 plans there. So the laws vary from state to state. Um, Federally, the law just changed so you can use 529 plan funds for lower education if kids go to private school. Though I just learned if you use it for that, it's not tax deductible. And also the law just changed so that if you don't use, I mean, it's pretty complex, but if you don't use your 529 plan, you could eventually roll it into a Roth. So it's definitely a place for a portion of education savings. Certainly, I have parents who say, well, but what if my child doesn't go to college? Or what if she gets a big package, financial aid package, and I won't use it? So I wouldn't put 100%. And I do also conversely have clients that like put the 10,000 in to get the tax deduction and immediately withdraw it. So it
You can
doesn't,
take it out.
yeah,
You can. You don't have to use it for education.
no, but immediately withdraw it for education, right? Like
Oh,
my kids last year in college, and it's like, so what? Put it in, get the tax deduction, and take it out to
for the school.
pay for school. In other words, they might say, I have the money. I don't need to put it in a
Got
529
it.
in a savings account. It's like, well, put it in the 529 plan, get the tax deduction, and then use it to.
Smart.
Another thing that I think is important to say, so I was using a software package that showed me all the different um, merit-based scholarships available because my clients are not going to get financial aid on the basis of need. I learned in my area that it didn't really matter. My clients were going to send their kids to the best school they got into, no matter what it cost. So I stopped paying for the software package. But one important piece of information is that look at what your child is interested and what their first job out of college is likely to be. If they're a software engineer, likely to get paid. So if they're going to be a software engineer, perhaps it's closer, frankly, to 100 grand a year. If they want to be an academic and go into teaching, it's going to be, let's say, closer to 30 to 50 grand a year. And don't take out more student loan debt over the 4 years than that amount that they're looking to earn in the first year, because the government will give you and private lenders will give you anything you're asked for. And then you have young people graduating who want to work for a nonprofit, who don't want pressures, aren't going to earn a lot of money, and have so much student loan debt. And I am talking about my son-in-law, for example, who's in his mid-30s and still has 6 figures of student loan debt. It's crazy. So nobody has an idea of how much they should borrow. And I think that should be part and parcel of the decision of what school you go to what you want to do with that degree, what you're likely to earn, and let that have a say in how much you should borrow.
Or have a say in that. Wow. That's big. How much responsibility do you think your parents should have for their kids? Again, it depends probably again,
That's the culture, right? I have clients who say, my parents didn't pay for college for me. My child is going to do it on their own. I would say most of the parents I work with lean other direction, not only, but want to make sure they're putting away for graduate school. And then others are, depending on their means, somewhere in the middle. I mean, I joke, I told my youngest son, who ended up going to University of Michigan as an out-of-state student, I said, if you go to a state school, I'll buy you a Mercedes. And he had no interest in the Mercedes, and he had a great time at Michigan. But you may be a parent that could only afford a state school.
Right. It depends on your situation. It's not a fair question. Yeah. A woman in my audience said, when you're retired, how do you know what you should be doing with your Roth and 401k accounts? Is this back to the investment thing where you should just continue to invest those accounts?
So there's various ways. So I don't know if the question is, which account should you withdraw?
It says when someone is retired, what should they be doing with their Roth and 401k accounts? That's all she had written in. Yeah.
So keep them invested. And the rule of thumb is, when starting to build a retirement paycheck, which we talked about, let's say that $60,000 a year that we're going to withdraw, is to first withdraw from taxable accounts, which is non-retirement accounts, and then withdraw from 401ks or other tax deferred accounts, and then withdraw from Roths. Now, why? If you withdraw from a non-retirement account, the only taxes you owe are capital gains taxes if you've had appreciation. And capital gains taxes right now for most of us are 15%.
Okay.
When you withdraw from tax deferred accounts, that's income. That's considered income. You've just deferred it, but the IRS is like, okay, now pay up. And you might be in a 32%, 35% tax bracket. I mean, perhaps lower, but still 28%, 24%. So tax deferred are secondary. And then Roths are the third, because there's never any required distributions from Roths. Tax deferred accounts, 401ks or IRAs, when you reach, right now the law is when you reach the age of 73, the IRS comes knocking on your door, and whether or not you need the money, they're like, okay, you've got some required minimum distributions, because they want to get their taxes. So, and so that leads to another thing that's talked about very much in my field, which is what's called Roth conversions. Because, for example, I'm one of these people, most of my savings are in tax deferred accounts. I'm even still putting money in a solo 401k. So if I look at my projections, I'm going to be at a pretty high tax bracket when I'm older. Maybe not higher than now, but for the period of time between when I stop working, let's say, and age 73, I want to take advantage of that period of time to take money then, whether or not I need it, out of my tax deferred accounts, pay the taxes when I'm in a low tax bracket, and put it in a Roth so that I'm not in a higher tax bracket when I'm older. And the tax bracket dictates what you pay for your Medicare premium. So there's a lot of conversation between looking at, will you be bumped into a higher tax rate when you're older? So do it now. And the fact that we may get a change in tax rates. The current tax structure is in place only, and it will sunset soon, and it's not clear whether it's going to be renewed. It depends who's going to be president, et cetera. And so tax rates in general might not be any lower than what they are now. So I work with my clients who are in retirement and are not yet at that age where they have required minimum distributions to determine how much we take out and convert into Roths. I'm not sure if that was the question that was
I think it's what to do with it to, like, should you be investing it?
Of course. If you have a 401k, I'm assuming you're invested. You're invested.
I wouldn't assume. I think a lot of women feel safer in cash. I agree with you that that's what they should be doing, but I need to revisit what I'm doing too. Like, as you're talking, I'm like, so if you have, let's say, just throw out a number again. Let's say if you have $100,000 in your 401k, what percentage of that should be invested? All of it?
All of it. So
all of it. Oh, look, that was very definite. See, I think a lot of women have, like you said, we're a little more risk averse.
So the thing about retirement accounts, I understand the woman asking the question said she was already retired. So
she's like 5 to 7 years away and wanted to know, like, how she should be thinking about.
If you're not touching the money for 7+ years or 5, rule of thumb is somewhere at least 5 years, perhaps 7 years plus. That money, you've got to take risk with it.
Yeah. Okay.
Like we said earlier, you need the money earlier, down payment on a home, gift to someone, that's something else. But retirement accounts, and I will agree, when I first met my husband, and of course I was the money person, so I looked at his retirement account, I'm like, you're invested in the money market account. What are you doing? But you're right, he had no idea. He had no idea.
Most people don't, Lord, they don't know what you know. That's why you're on. We don't know. So we want to put it in. Say it again. You said it earlier. Put that money in a low, what did you say, a low cost?
Yeah, you will have, if it's a retirement account with your employer, you have a fixed amount of investment choices. And the easiest recommendation I can make, it didn't exist when I was younger, but now everybody has choices of what's known as target date funds. So you basically choose a year that you imagine you will be retiring. So for this woman, 5 years from now, 7 years from now, and then the fund itself will adjust the asset allocation. It will own some bonds, it will own stocks, it will have probably a tiny amount of cash. And as you age, it will adjust to get less risky.
Okay. And if you work for yourself, you use your financial planner to help do that? Or
yes. Because the financial planner will really know the need for the money and how much risk. I invest my clients as a household. So I'm not looking at each account and determining how that should be invested. I'm looking at their non-retirement accounts, their retirement accounts, how much additional savings they're doing each year to come up with an appropriate allocation. For people who are not clients, but I do get asked this question all the time, what should I invest my money in? If you're at Fidelity or Vanguard with your IRA or Schwab with your IRA, Fidelity has target date funds. Vanguard has target date funds. It's the easiest thing to do if you don't have someone who's helping you choose individual funds and checking every quarter to see if it needs to be rebalanced. It's sort of a set it and forget it, which is the thing to do.
But don't do the money markets because they're not paying.
The money markets are for the money that you need in the next 3 to 5 years.
Okay. So because you can get access to it. Otherwise, if you don't need to touch it, get it moving and working for you and ride the ups and downs. I know you've talked about that before. Okay. What do you advise clients they do for, like, the whole package? Do you tell them get a will, trust, life insurance, that kind of thing?
Yes. I make sure that they meet with an estate planning attorney. Nowadays, the estate tax exclusion is much higher than most normal human beings would care about. And so if you have a partner, or if you're married and you didn't have a will, the court would, it would, of course, the assets were passed to your partner. Why it's important to have a will and other estate planning documents is you need to name a healthcare proxy who's going to make healthcare decisions for you if you're not able to. You need to have a living will. You need to sit down, and I actually help lead these conversations and say, what kind of life quality do you want? And so how do you want decisions to be made? Again, if you can't participate in that decision making, if something happened to you yesterday and you're not conscious and you may not regain consciousness. So you need a living will, and you need to discuss your needs. You need a healthcare proxy, and you need a power of attorney. Again, if something happened to you, who can write checks on your account? Who can take care of your finances? And finally, if you have children below the age of majority, you need to name guardians for your children so that you're not leaving that to a court. Who do you want to take care of your children if something were to happen to you?
Yeah.
And those are the most important things. The passage of the assets, frankly, for most of us right now, the estate tax exclusion federally is over $11 million, and as a couple is over $22 million. I don't work with anyone that has that kind of money. So that's sort of in the moot point. You put that in place because you're putting all the other needs in place. In terms of insurance, please make sure you have enough life insurance. Term life insurance is not that expensive. And again, I like to say if something happened yesterday and you have a mortgage and you have kids to send to college and you're a big part of your family income, you want a life insurance policy so your family will be okay. And even if you're a stay-at-home mom, you want life insurance on your life also, because if something, again, yesterday were to have happened to you, perhaps your husband wants to take a year off, or your husband needs to hire someone to live in and provide help. And again, it could be that the husband is grieving for the wife and you're grieving. So as somebody said to me who went through this, it was just nice to get a check and feel like he's communicating to me from beyond. So both partners need life insurance. I always have a conversation with my clients about long-term care insurance, and there's different variables we look at. Some purchase it, some don't. The other expensive insurance that is hard for people to sign on to, but is just as necessary as life insurance, is disability insurance.
Mm.
What if something happened to you yesterday and you can't work for the next couple of years?
Is that through their employer usually, or no?
So there's insurance through your employer, but often because the employer is paying for the insurance, more and more I've seen the ability to make the choice to have the cost imputed to you. So you'll see a couple of dollars coming out of each pay stub. But if you don't have that choice, or you don't make that choice, then not only is the disability insurance 60% of your income often, but then you're going to be taxed on it.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's hit by more. So there's often a need for private insurance, private disability insurance, and as opposed to term life insurance, it's expensive. And I'll have clients hem and haw, and I'll say, okay, that's great. So don't buy it. Something happened to you yesterday. You have monthly expenses of, again, I'm going to pick a number out of a hat, $10,000, but your disability is going to provide $5,000. Where's that additional $5,000 coming from? Are you moving out of your house? Are you taking kids out of private school? I mean, what's changing? And then they go, okay, send me the application. So I will say disability is harder because it's a bigger number. Life insurance, frankly, for most of us, if we're healthy and still in our 50s, let's say, it's a no-brainer. It does not cost a lot of money. Of course, it costs something, but it doesn't cost a lot of money. And long-term care, most of my clients can self-fund. The conversation I have is, what were the end of your parents' life like, or how are they aging now? What are your financial resources? How risk averse are you? How much do you want to leave a legacy to your kids? I have long-term care insurance. My mother had dementia for a while. She, at the end of her life, needed 24/7 care. It was very expensive. And I do not have enough insurance to cover all of it, but I have enough insurance to cover some of it to make it easier for, let's say, my kids, if they're helping out, that they know that there's a resource there available.
Laura, what partners do we need? Do we need that financial advisor? Like everything you're saying, like, gosh, sometimes it would be nice to just work with someone like you and just have somebody guiding the conversation. But if somebody can't afford that, I just want to break down because you mentioned an estate attorney. What is it? A life insurance? Like, is your life insurance person the one who can help with all these other kinds of insurance? Who do we reach out to?
Nowadays, you can actually, there are several online life insurance is quite easy to get. There are several online life insurance quoters. I work directly both with a life insurance broker as well as a property and casualty insurance broker. It's important to make sure, I know someone who recently, a younger person who did not have great auto insurance, and then suddenly, oh, I can't get a loaner car. That's not included in my insurance. I can't replace the glass. That's not included in my insurance. So it's important to have a broker that will look for gaps in coverage as well as the cost that's going up in expense. I am a firm believer in working with a financial advisor. And there are different levels. There are hourly planners who will just help you sort of get a snapshot of where you are and make recommendations of how to get to where you'd like to be, and will charge you a one-time fee for doing that plan. I work with people who are really looking to have an ongoing relationship. Having had several of my clients go through an unexpected event, it's nice to have someone who already knows you, knows who you are, what you value, what your resources are, as opposed to then contacting someone and getting up to speed. And it tends to be, again, I've had people who call me and say, well, but like everything's okay. And it's like, yes, of course, it's nice to have a relationship and everything is okay. It's when the shit hits the fan.
Exactly.
It's nice to have someone who really knows you and understands you.
Yeah. Can you work nationally, or do you stay?
I do work nationally.
Oh, you can. You have,
Florida, New York. I do like to meet, and since COVID is over, I've started to meet with people live, but I do so many of my meetings. Even people who live close by would prefer to just get on Zoom.
I know. We got used to it. So basically, a financial planner, a life insurance broker, or an insurance broker, and an estate attorney.
Estate planning attorney, yes.
Estate planning attorney.
There is, and I can give you that link. There are more online services. I work with something called Trust and Will for clients who are pretty simple, who don't really need to have the value of an estate planning attorney, which is, if things are more complex, putting on trust for special needs children or younger children, making sure that they don't just inherit the money when they're young, then it's great to have someone to have a conversation with. And I work very closely with several estate planning attorneys, but you can also put a simple trust and will online.
Okay.
So I can give you.
Yes, I want to list all those resources. And we've covered a lot today, but is there anything that I didn't ask that you think, I really want to make sure Michelle's audience takes away from this conversation?
I guess I find myself wanting to say, be kind to yourself, which is how I started. There's a lot of emotions that are tied in with money, our sense of self-worth, our sense of power, our sense of control, our sense of security. And it's no wonder that it's often hard for us to take the first step and start looking at our money. And so please be kind and compassionate to yourself. And part of that self-care is being aware of your resources.
Yeah. Any courses or books? We'd mentioned MICHELE'S, or is there a favorite one in MICHELE'S, or like just to get more financial literacy? If somebody's like, I need to really get up to speed, what's out there?
Like I said, MICHELE'S books I love. They're written specifically for women. There is one also, I think it's Talking Money with Your Honey,
Oh, cute.
which I think that's also Manish's book. And
Oh,
it's important. When my kids got married, I bought them that book. Actually, I am a fan of, the book is called The Algebra of Wealth, and this speaks to what we first said, Michelle, about having control over our income. It's written by Scott Galloway. He's a I enjoy him. He's a little,
I know who he is. I follow him.
I bought that book for my kids. It's almost the opposite of when I left Wall Street and was like, follow your passion. And now I'm realizing, well, I can say that to myself now because I've accumulated wealth and I'm older. And, but my kids in their 20s and 30s, be intentional about building your wealth. Yeah. So I just bought them that book. I'll find out. I'm spending the weekend with them, whether they've actually taken it out of the Amazon.
So funny. Laura, it's always so wonderful sitting with you, connecting with you, learning from you. I just love the way you approach it. I love your spiritually minded focus, mindfulness, values, all those things that you're connecting. Because I think if we disconnect, like you started, there's the inner and the outer. If we're only doing the outer, we're missing such an important part of the equation. And I don't think we ever get that whole sense of power back, or that sense of understanding of how to do it and do it well, because we're going to be at odds if we're not integrating.
Exactly. Thank you so much for asking me to have this conversation with you, Michelle. It's so important.
Thank you for being here. And thanks to the women in my audience for submitting their questions. This actually came as a result of a woman who wrote in from my newsletter, and this show is for you guys. So be sure to submit your questions. And if I can get the right guest and it fits with the show, I'm going to cover it. And I got me the opportunity to connect with Laura again. So that's always wonderful. All of the information will be on the show notes, all the links, but do give us your favorite handles for people to reach out to you with, Laura.
My email address is Laura, Laura, at trueabundanceadvisors with an O.com. My website is trueabundanceadvisors.com. And I too have a podcast called Making Change with Your Money. And Michelle was one of my favorite guests. So.
Oh, you're so sweet. You're so sweet. Yes, check out all of that. And it's right on your podcast player. So go connect to Laura, get the information. If you're not up to speed on your financial health, then make it a priority, because we do want to enter our retirement feeling empowered and comfortable with where we're at. So thanks again, Laura. Hey, friend, I have one request before we sign off today. If you've gained any value from any of the interviews that you've tuned into, would you take just 1 minute and leave a 5-star rating and review over on Apple Podcasts? It's actually how more women can find the show, and I want to continue growing a community of women who are loving themselves and living full on. So thank you for all of your support, and I look forward to being back with you next week. Bye for now.
This podcast is presented for entertainment and educational purposes only. Any information provided is not intended to be a substitute for medical, mental health, or other professional advice. Seek out your trusted healthcare provider or other qualified professional for all matters dealing with your health and well-being. Any opinions or information provided by a guest are their own and not those of Michele Lamoureux or the company.